7 nurses. 9 months. Every one of them left. The last one told the placement agency she would rather work 3 consecutive ER shifts than spend another afternoon in that penthouse. The agency stopped sending replacements. Marcus Holloway had that effect on people. What nobody understood, not his adult children, not his physicians, not the hospital chaplain who came once and never returned, was that Marcus was not trying to be cruel. He was testing them. Every door he slammed, every meal tray he shoved aside, every silence he sharpened into a weapon, none of it was cruelty. It was a question. The question a man asks when he has spent 63 years being immovable and wakes up one morning unable to stand. Is there a single person left who will stay? 6 had answered no. The 7th was already in the elevator. Marcus did not know her name yet. The penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a building Marcus Holloway had built at 44. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Unobstructed views of the city from every room. The kind of place that announced, without saying a word, that the man who lived here had won. Now it announced something else. The nurses all noticed the same things when they arrived. The medical equipment along the east wall, the wheelchair ramp installed over the original hardwood, the hospital-grade bed replacing whatever had been there before. The modifications that turned a monument into a ward. None of them noticed what wasn't there. The book on the nightstand, a 400-page biography Marcus had ordered the week before the stroke. A bookmark still lodged at chapter 1. 9 months. The same page. The phone charging on the dresser. 5 feet from the bed. Out of reach unless he asked someone to move it. The photo album on the shelf. Face down. The medication tray. Bottles upright, seals unbroken. No music. No television. Not a single sound in 1,200 square feet except the mechanical hum of equipment keeping a man alive who had decided, without telling anyone, to stop living in any direction that required help. Dana Cole arrived on a Wednesday morning with a single bag, flat shoes, and no visible interest in impressing anyone. She was 31. A decade in ICU wards had given her the particular composure of someone who had held the hands of dying strangers at 3 a.m. and still showed up the following shift without theater. She didn't perform empathy. She administered it, quietly, and only when it was useful. Dr. Raymond Solis had called her personally. He had treated Marcus's wife during her final 18 months, and was the only person from that period Marcus had never fired, sued, or stopped taking calls from. That alone meant something. Solis had said 3 sentences on the phone. He's not difficult. He's terrified. Don't let him win. Dana had written none of it down. She didn't need to. She cleared security, rode the elevator to the 41st floor, and knocked twice on the door before opening it herself. Marcus was by the window in his wheelchair, back to the room, facing the city. He didn't turn around. You can leave the same way you came in. Good morning, Mr. Holloway. I didn't ask for your name. I said leave. Dana set her bag down near the entrance. She looked around the room once, the book, the phone, the medication tray, in the practiced way of someone cataloging a situation, not decorating it. I'm not here because you asked, she said. Dr. Solis asked. Those are different things. Marcus turned the wheelchair to face her. Whatever he had expected, apology, nerves, the usual performance of deference, Dana Cole was not delivering it. She met his stare the way a person meets weather. Acknowledgement without alarm. I'll fire you by noon, Marcus said. You're welcome to try, Dana said. I'll be in the kitchen. He did not fire her by noon. He didn't fire her that day at all, which surprised no one more than Marcus. She had simply not given him the friction he required. She didn't hover. She didn't ask how he was feeling. She didn't speak in the softened, round-edged tones people reserved for the sick and the old. She moved through the penthouse the way water moves, finding the available space, filling it, not announcing itself. He tried again the following morning. Told her she was rearranging things that didn't need rearranging, breathing too loudly, and he wanted her gone before lunch. Dana looked at him without expression. What time is lunch? By the end of the first week, Marcus had told her to leave 4 times. She had responded to each dismissal with the same quality of attention she gave everything else, present, unperturbed, entirely unhurried about complying. What Dana had noticed by day 3, something none of the previous 7 nurses had identified, was the precise geography of Marcus's helplessness. It wasn't his legs. He could transfer himself to the bed without assistance, could navigate every room of the penthouse in the wheelchair without difficulty. His body had limitations. He had mapped them and accepted them with the cold efficiency of a man, who had spent 4 decades solving logistical problems. What he could not do was ask. The phone on the far dresser. Still there. Still 5 feet from the bed. She moved it to the nightstand on day 4 without comment. Marcus said nothing. But the following morning, the phone was back on the far dresser. She moved it carefully back to the nightstand. He moved it back to the dresser. This continued for 3 days. Dana did not mention it. Neither did Marcus. It was, she thought, the most honest conversation they had managed all week. On the 9th day, Dana sat down in the chair beside the nightstand, picked up the book, the 400-page biography with the bookmark still at chapter 1, and opened it without asking permission. She began to read aloud. Not performing, not projecting, reading the way a person reads to themselves, steadily and without ceremony. Marcus didn't move. She read for 20 minutes. Set the book down with the bookmark advanced 9 pages. Stood, checked the medication tray without commenting on the unopened bottles, and walked back to the kitchen. Marcus sat by the window for a long time after she left. He did not call her back. He did not tell her not to do it again. The following morning, Dana sat down and opened the book to page 9. Marcus was already facing the room when she arrived. On the 14th day, Marcus refused his medication for the 4th consecutive morning. He didn't announce it. Didn't explain it. Simply looked at the tray Dana set beside him and looked away in the manner of a man who had already settled the argument inside his own head and saw no reason to present his reasoning to the room. Dana removed the tray quietly. She walked to the window and stood there for a moment, looking out at the city the way Marcus used to look at it, measuring it, not admiring it. Then she sat down in the chair across from him. "My grandfather's name was Earl," she said. Marcus didn't respond. He built houses for 31 years. Custom homes mostly. He had hands that could read with the way other men read blueprints. People drove 2 counties over to hire him. He knew it. He never said so. She didn't look at Marcus while she spoke. She looked at the window. He was the kind of man who believed that needing something from another person was the same as owing them something. He never borrowed. Never asked. Worked through a broken wrist once for 3 weeks because going to the doctor would have meant admitting something was wrong. The room was very quiet. He had a stroke at 72. Smaller than yours, actually. Left his right side weak. Nothing he couldn't have managed with consistent care and someone keeping him honest about his medication. She paused. He fired 4 home health aides in 2 months. Told my grandmother Ruth he didn't need strangers in his house handling his business. Marcus's jaw shifted slightly, but he said nothing. Ruth stayed anyway. 41 years of marriage, and she stayed through every door he slammed, and every meal he refused, and every morning she found the medication untouched on the tray. Dana looked at him. He died 14 months after the stroke. Not because the stroke was unsurvivable, because he spent 14 months making sure nobody could reach him. The city outside the window made no sound. "I went to the funeral," Dana said. "I was 19. I watched my grandmother stand at his grave for a long time after everyone else had moved toward the cars. I walked over and asked her what she was thinking. The chair didn't creak. The ventilation didn't hum. There was nothing in that room making any sound at all. She said, 'He never let me love him.'" Dana stood up, walked to the medication tray, set it back on the table beside Marcus's chair. Didn't say another word. Marcus looked at the tray for a long time. Then he picked up the first bottle. Marcus didn't speak for 3 days after that. Not the familiar silence, the weaponized kind he had perfected over 9 months. The silence that was really a dismissal, a door shut in the face of anyone who came close. This was different. This was the silence of a man sitting very still inside a realization he could not walk away from. Dana noticed the difference and said nothing. She came each morning, read the book, checked the tray, and left without extending the visit. She did not ask what he was thinking. She had learned enough about him to know that a man like Marcus didn't arrive at things when you pushed. He arrived at them when he was ready, and not a moment before. On the 3rd morning, she came in to find him facing the shelf. The photo album was in his lap. Still closed. But he had moved it from where it had sat face down for 9 months, and that alone was something. She set his medication on the table without comment. Sat in the chair across from him. She waited. Marcus eventually spoke without looking up. "My father's name was Gerald," he said. "He worked construction for 38 years. Poured foundations, framed walls, built things that are still standing in this city. He had the hands for it." He turned the album once in his lap. "He lost the use of those hands at 61. Rheumatoid arthritis. Came on fast, the way those things do when they've been building quietly for years. Dana didn't move. He lasted 91 days after the diagnosis. Not because the disease was unsurvivable. Because the moment those hands stopped working, my father decided the rest of him was finished too. His voice didn't break. It did something much quieter. It thinned. He stopped eating. Stopped engaging. Told my mother he didn't need help, and meant it the way a man means something when he'd rather die than be seen needing. He paused. I was 14. I watched it happen, and I swore I would never become that man. He finally looked up at Dana. So I built everything I built, so I would never need anyone. So nothing could take enough from me that I'd have to ask. His jaw tightened once, then released. And here I am. Dana held his gaze and didn't look away. Here you are, she said. She picked up the photo album on the 4th day. Not gently, not reverently, the way a person moves something that has sat in the wrong place too long. She placed it open in his lap. Marcus looked down at the first page. 2 photographs. One of a woman in a yellow dress standing at a window that faced the ocean. One of 3 children on a porch, 2 girls and a boy, all squinting into the same afternoon sun. Dana sat back down. She didn't explain herself. She asked one question. Who are they? He was quiet for long enough that she thought he might close the album, but his hand moved to the edge of the page instead. That's Carol, he said. His voice had a different texture now. The way sounds different when it's been in water and dried out wrong. We were married for 26 years. She died 4 years before the stroke. He looked at the photograph for a moment. She used to say I treated our marriage like a construction project, that I was always focused on what still needed doing instead of what was already built. Dana said nothing. She wasn't wrong. He turned the page. The 3 children appeared again, older this time. A family Christmas. A fireplace. Everyone leaning slightly toward one another except Marcus, who stood at the edge of the frame looking directly at the camera. My son is in Denver. My daughters both live within 20 minutes of here. They call on Sundays. He paused. I don't always pick up. He said it the way a man reports a fact he no longer defends. The room held the silence without difficulty. It had learned to. They came when I had the stroke, he said. All 3 of them. Sat in that hospital waiting room for 11 hours. His thumb moved along the edge of the page without quite touching the photograph. I told them to go home. Told them there was nothing to wait for. He stopped. They went. Dana just watched him. They always go, he said. Quieter now. Not with bitterness, with the particular exhaustion of a man who has gotten exactly what he asked for so long, that he no longer remembers asking. Dana let the quiet hold for another moment. Then she said, Staying is how you love someone who doesn't know they need love. Marcus looked up from the album. Who told you that? My grandmother, Dana said. She said it about Earl. I didn't understand it until I sat across from you. Marcus looked back down at the photograph of Carol in the yellow dress. He didn't close the album. His children came on a Saturday. All 3 of them, which told Dana everything before anyone said a word. People don't travel from Denver on a weekend without a reason. People don't coordinate arrival times without a conversation that happened somewhere she wasn't invited to. His son, James, was 39 and wore his father's jawline and none of his patience. His daughters, Renee and Claire, flanked him in the doorway of the penthouse like they had rehearsed the geometry of the intervention. They were polite to Dana. The kind of polite that means the opposite. James spoke first while the others sat. There was a facility, he said, 40 minutes outside the city. Private, highly rated staff-to-patient ratio that their own doctor had described as exceptional. They had already toured it. They had already spoken to the admissions team. They had already done everything except ask their father. Marcus listened without expression. Renee mentioned the security of a supervised environment. Claire mentioned consistency of care. James mentioned, carefully and only once, that they didn't know enough about Dana. Where she'd come from. Who had sent her. What her interest in staying was beyond the contract she'd been offered. Dana was in the kitchen. She could hear all of it. She stayed exactly where she was. Marcus took the folder James set in front of him. He opened it. He read the brochure, the intake assessment form, the letter from the admissions coordinator. He read the doctor's recommendation, which was measured and professional, and said, essentially, that the decision was his to make and that either path was medically defensible. He closed the folder. He sat with it in his hands for a long time. His children waited. They had learned, across the decades of growing up in his particular orbit, how to be still while he thought. It was one of the few things he had taught them without meaning to. Dana filled a glass of water in the kitchen and didn't drink it. The folder was the same weight as every decision Marcus Holloway had ever made alone. He recognized it. He had made a career of it, sitting in rooms, holding documents, choosing without consulting anyone, because consulting meant needing, and needing meant owing, and owing was the thing he had spent 63 years refusing to do. He set the folder on the table. He looked directly at his son. She stays. 2 words. The most decisive sentence he had produced in 9 months. Not for Dana. For himself. The first time in 63 years that Marcus Holloway had chosen to keep someone rather than send them away. James looked at his sisters. Nobody argued. Not one word. 6 months is not a long time to rebuild a life. But it is long enough to begin. Marcus Holloway does not walk out of the penthouse. He does not stand at a podium and deliver a speech about resilience. There is no morning where he wakes up healed. What happens instead is quieter and more true. He starts taking his medication at the same time every day. He starts sleeping through the night. He starts eating full meals at the table instead of letting trays go cold by the window. Small things. The kind of things no one writes about in a recovery story because they don't look like recovery. They look like just living. His physical therapist notes, in her 3rd month of sessions, that his upper body strength has improved beyond what his injury profile projected. She attributes it to consistency. She doesn't know that consistency for Marcus is an act of will he hasn't attempted in 9 months. She doesn't know what it cost him to begin. Dana Cole knows. She has watched him choose, every single morning, not to go back to war with himself. She has sat across from him while he looked at photographs and said the names out loud, his wife Eleanor, his son David, his daughter Priya, the grandchildren he had not seen since the stroke because he could not bear to be seen. She watched him make the call. She did not leave the room while he made it. He didn't ask her to. The contract ends on a Thursday. She comes in that morning the same way she always does, no announcement, no ceremony. She makes coffee. She checks his medications. She begins folding the last of her things into the bag she brought on her first day, the one he told her to take back out the door. He watches her from across the room. He is quiet for a long time. The particular kind of quiet she has learned to read, not the silence he used as a weapon in those first weeks, cold and designed to wound. This is different. This is a man standing at the edge of something, looking down. Dana. She looks up. He does not dress it up. He does not explain it or qualify it or surround it with conditions the way he has surrounded everything else his entire life. Stay, he says. She looks at him for a moment. Then she reaches into the bag, takes out the book, same book, chapter 1, the bookmark exactly where it has always been, and opens it to chapter 2. I was wondering, she says, when you'd ask.